When Karen targeted Emma's dog Buddy, she thought her HOA power made her untouchable. But Emma uncovered the truth behind Karen's shocking violations. What happened next turned everything upside down. Justice was finally served. It was one of those perfect autumn mornings in suburban Colorado, the kind where the air was crisp, leaves crunched underfoot, and the scent of fresh coffee lingered in the breeze. Emma Wallace, a dedicated marketing professional, cherished these quiet moments. Her backyard was her sanctuary, a neatly trimmed lawn surrounded by a sturdy wooden fence. The centerpiece of this peaceful retreat was Buddy, her golden retriever, a gentle giant who'd come into her life through a rescue organization. As Buddy bounded across the yard, chasing a bright red tennis ball, Emma smiled. This was her happy place, a stark contrast to the demanding deadlines and client calls she juggled daily. But the tranquility was short-lived. The familiar sound of hurried footsteps crunching on gravel interrupted her thoughts. Turning, Emma saw Karen Whitfield, her next-door neighbor, marching towards her property with a determined scowl. Karen, known for her unrelenting opinions and self-proclaimed authority, had earned a reputation in the neighborhood. Many jokingly referred to her as the sheriff of the cul-de-sac, but Emma wasn't laughing today. Karen stopped at the edge of Emma's yard, hands on her hips, her brow furrowed with exaggerated concern. "Your dog is a menace," she declared, her voice sharp enough to cut through the stillness of the morning. She jabbed a finger toward Buddy, who had paused mid-fetch, his tail wagging innocently. Emma blinked, taken aback. "Excuse me?" she replied, her voice calm but cautious. Karen pressed on, her words escalating in intensity. "He barks incessantly, disturbs the peace, and terrorizes the neighborhood. This cannot go on." Emma looked at Buddy, who had now trotted over to her side, sitting obediently with his soulful brown eyes fixed on Karen. "Buddy isn't loud," Emma said, choosing her words carefully. "He's a rescue, and he's never caused any trouble." Karen wasn't interested in explanations. "I don't care what you think. I'm calling animal control. That dog is a threat to public safety," she snapped, before turning on her heel and stomping back to her house. Emma stood there, stunned, as Karen's words echoed in her mind. She had encountered difficult people before, but Karen's accusation felt deeply personal. Buddy, her loyal companion, was far from the picture Karen painted. By Tuesday morning, Emma's disbelief turned into frustration. A notice was taped to her front door. Karen had followed through on her threat. Buddy had been reported to animal control. As Emma read the notice, her heart sank, and a mix of anger and worry bubbled within her. She resolved to get to the bottom of this. Emma's investigation began with a walk around the neighborhood. As she passed Karen's property, something unusual caught her attention. The unmistakable sound of barking, a cacophony of yelps and howls, emanated from Karen's backyard. Curiosity piqued, Emma peered through the slats of the tall privacy fence. What she saw made her jaw drop. Karen's backyard was filled with makeshift kennels, each housing multiple dogs. The smell of overcrowded animals and the sight of poorly maintained cages painted a grim picture. Emma quickly realized this wasn't a simple case of a noisy neighbor. Karen was running an unlicensed kennel, likely violating multiple zoning and health regulations. For a moment, Emma's anger gave way to disbelief. How could Karen accuse Buddy of being disruptive when she herself was the source of the neighborhood's noise issues? But this wasn't just hypocrisy. It was a blatant abuse of the system. Emma clenched her fists, her resolve hardening. This wasn't just about defending Buddy anymore. It was about standing up to someone who used intimidation and manipulation to maintain control. Emma didn't know exactly how she would fight back, but one thing was clear. She wasn't going to let Karen get away with this. As she turned back toward her house, a thought crossed her mind. Karen might think she's untouchable, but she has no idea what she's just started. Emma stared at the notice on her door, her fingers tightening around the edge of the paper. The accusation against Buddy felt like a personal attack. Her dog, a calm, loving golden retriever, was far from the menace Karen had described. Determined to clear Buddy's name, Emma decided to talk to her neighbors and gather their support. She started with Mr. Hernandez, the elderly widower who lived 2 doors down. He invited her in, offering tea as he listened to her story. When Emma mentioned Karen's complaint, Mr. Hernandez let out a bitter laugh. Karen, she fined me for not leashing my cat once. A cat. She's always looking for someone to target. Emma felt a flicker of hope. Would you mind writing a statement about Buddy? It could really help. Mr. Hernandez agreed without hesitation, but the next few doors didn't yield the same result. Some neighbors were sympathetic, but hesitant to get involved. Karen has too much influence with the HOA, one whispered, glancing nervously toward her house. I can't risk getting on her bad side. Despite the setbacks, Emma managed to collect a handful of statements. She also took photos of Buddy playing calmly in the yard, ensuring every detail looked as innocent as possible. She hoped the combination of evidence would help her case, but her optimism dimmed as the day went on. That evening, Emma sat at her kitchen table surrounded by notes and HOA records she'd accessed online. Her heart raced when she discovered something alarming. Multiple noise complaints tied directly to Karen's property. These weren't about Buddy, but about barking dogs from her backyard. Emma read further, her frustration growing. Karen's unlicensed kennel was not only the loudest source of disturbance in the neighborhood, but also illegal under local zoning laws. Emma leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. How does she keep getting away with this? She muttered. Later that night, as Emma prepared to head to bed, a faint noise drew her to the window. She saw headlights sweeping across Karen's driveway. Emma watched as Karen unloaded cages from a van marked Whitfield Kennels. The barking was unmistakable, even from a distance. Emma grabbed her phone and stepped onto her porch. Hidden in the shadows, she snapped photos as Karen struggled to maneuver a large cage into her backyard. When the van pulled away, Emma reviewed the photos, her mind racing with possibilities. She drafted an anonymous email to a local journalist known for uncovering community scandals. Along with the photos, Emma included details about Karen's illegal kennel and her misuse of HOA rules. After pressing send, Emma leaned back in her chair, exhaling deeply. This isn't just about us anymore, Buddy, she said, stroking his head. It's about standing up to someone who thinks they're above the rules. Buddy wagged his tail, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to Emma's racing thoughts. Together, they would see this through. Emma sat at her kitchen table, the soft glow of her laptop illuminating the stacks of papers and folders around her. The comforting scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the room, but even that couldn't calm the storm of emotion she felt. Each click of her mouse and each line of text she read added another layer to the puzzle. Emma had filed a public records request to dig deeper into Karen's so-called kennel, and what she uncovered left her stunned. Karen was operating without a license. Not only that, her backyard kennel blatantly violated HOA bylaws and city zoning laws. The findings were a mix of validation and outrage. How could someone who bent the rules so blatantly have the audacity to accuse others of wrongdoing? But Karen wasn't backing down. If anything, she had doubled down on her attacks. The next day, Emma found a letter from the HOA citing vague disruption clauses and threatening fines for Buddy. The letter reeked of Karen's handiwork, a desperate attempt to maintain her grip on the neighborhood. Emma felt her frustration bubbling over, but she knew she couldn't afford to lose her composure. This isn't just petty revenge, she thought. This is about power. Realizing she needed professional help, Emma reached out to Nicole Grant, a local lawyer with a reputation for tackling cases against overreaching HOAs. Nicole was sharp and no-nonsense, her confidence a steadying force in the whirlwind Emma found herself in. "We'll counter this with facts," Nicole said firmly during their first meeting. "People like Karen thrive on intimidation, but the truth is on your side." With Nicole's guidance, Emma began piecing together a stronger case. Nicole's team scoured HOA financial records and found something shocking. Funds earmarked for community projects had been diverted to Karen's personal expenses, including renovations to her kennel. As Nicole explained the details, Emma's jaw tightened. She's not just breaking rules, she's exploiting everyone around her. Armed with this new evidence, Emma and Nicole devised a plan. The next HOA meeting would be their stage to confront Karen publicly. They would present the facts and let the community decide if they wanted someone like Karen representing their interests. The weight of it all pressed heavily on Emma's shoulders that evening as she sat on her porch, Buddy resting his head on her lap. The calm of the autumn night contrasted starkly with the battle brewing in her mind. She gently stroked Buddy's fur, drawing comfort from his steady presence. "Karen thinks she's untouchable," Emma whispered, her voice steady despite the turmoil, "but she doesn't realize she's given us everything we need to stop her." As the stars began to dot the sky, Emma felt a flicker of hope. For the first time in weeks, she believed justice might truly be within reach. The community center buzzed with nervous energy as neighbors filled the room, whispering among themselves. The HOA meeting was more crowded than anyone could remember. Every chair was occupied, and a few residents stood along the walls, eager to witness what had been whispered about for weeks: a confrontation between Emma Wallace and Karen Whitfield. Emma sat near the front, her hands clutching a folder filled with evidence. Beside her was Nicole Grant, her lawyer, exuding calm confidence. Emma glanced at Buddy's photo tucked into the folder and felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about her dog anymore, it was about holding Karen accountable. The meeting began with the usual formalities, but the tension in the room was palpable. When the floor was open for new business, Emma rose to speak. The room fell silent. She began by recounting Karen's accusations against Buddy, her voice steady but firm. Then, she laid out the facts: noise logs that showed Karen's kennel as the true source of disturbances, zoning laws that prohibited such operations in residential areas, and records proving the kennel was unlicensed. As Emma spoke, she projected images onto the screen: photos of Karen's property, barking dogs crammed into cages, and the van emblazoned with Whitfield Kennels. Gasps rippled through the audience. Even those who had been hesitant to stand against Karen couldn't deny the evidence before them. Nicole took over, her tone sharp but professional. She revealed the financial discrepancies in the HOA records. Funds allocated for community improvements had been redirected to cover Karen's kennel renovations. Nicole's voice grew more pointed as she explained how Karen had exploited her position to fund personal projects while bullying residents into compliance. Karen, sitting rigidly at the head of the table, tried to maintain composure. When it was her turn to respond, her voice wavered. "This is all a misunderstanding," she stammered. "Clerical errors, that's all. And the kennel? It's a charitable venture. I rescue stray dogs." The room erupted in murmurs. A voice from the back cut through the noise. "Karen," said Mr. Hernandez, his tone firm, "you've been using our money for personal gain while treating us like we're beneath you. Enough is enough." Another HOA member stood, addressing the room. "I move to suspend Karen from her position, pending a full investigation." The motion was seconded almost immediately, and a vote was called. The result was unanimous. Karen's influence crumbled in an instant, her protests drowned out by the collective decision of her neighbors. By the end of the week, city officials arrived to inspect Karen's property. Her kennel was shut down for multiple violations, and she was slapped with fines for breaching zoning laws. The neighborhood seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief as her once imposing presence began to fade. Emma stood on her porch the evening after the meeting, watching the sunset with Buddy by her side. For the first time in weeks, the air felt lighter. As Buddy wagged his tail, Emma smiled, knowing she had done the right thing. Not just for herself, but for everyone Karen had wronged. Justice had been served, and the neighborhood could finally move forward. The neighborhood felt different now, lighter, freer. Karen's unlicensed kennel had been shut down, and the hefty fines she faced for misusing HOA funds sent a clear message. Within months, she moved away, her once dominating presence replaced by a newfound sense of unity among the residents. Emma became the quiet hero of the community. Neighbors who had once stayed silent now stopped by to thank her. Mr. Hernandez, ever grateful, brought her a batch of homemade cookies. "You reminded us we have a voice," he said with a smile. Taking Buddy for a walk one crisp evening, Emma paused to admire the peaceful streets. Children played, neighbors chatted, and the shadow Karen had cast was gone. The story of Emma's fight spread beyond her neighborhood, inspiring others to stand against bullies in their own communities. As she crouched to hug Buddy, Emma smiled. "We did it, Buddy. We made a difference.